I'm going to go back into these mountains now. Remember, I wanted to make that dark line not stand out so much. So with my medium pencil, I'm going to take that line and turn it into some planes on the mountain, areas where there's light and shadow. Because it is darker in areas on top of that mountain, but it's not a dark line, it's shapes that have a darker edge to them. So after putting those in, I will blend, and if I use the edge of my blending stump, see how I can just do kind of one swipe and indicate that whole shadowed plane? So if I use the point right now, it's going to take a very long time, lots of scrubbing, so the side would be more efficient. And now it starts to look mountainous. I do want to make sure that this mountain stays lighter than this one. It's competing a little bit, so I'll start off just by darkening a little bit of the top of this mountain, and I may lift some off of that one. So there's a big shadowed area right in here. And I'm looking at the direction of the shadows in the mountains, and they're going diagonally up and to the right. It's still competing, so with my kneaded eraser, I'm going to make a flattened pancake shape, like that. And let's see what happens if I press and lift. It should just take a little bit off the top. And that side has picked up a lot of charcoal, so I'm going to flip it over and use the other side for a bit. And then let's see if I can go a little bit darker on this front mountain too. I just really want to show that atmospheric perspective between the two. My mountain gets a little lost there, so let's take off a little bit. And right here as well. Make sure I can see the separation here. And then I think this mountain back here is working well, so I'll leave that one alone. At this point, I'll clean up any stray drawing marks that I don't want there. And I might go back in, put a couple more shadows in my bushes. Add a little more contrast in the middle ground back here, because we don't want our eye to have a big jump from here to there. So there's a little contrast there, and maybe a little more right in through here. And then remember, if you want to add a couple highlights in the foreground, you can always erase out a couple lights here and there. So I can add some highlights on my bushes, and then just darken a little bit around the highlights so they stand out from what's around them. And I could erase out some highlights here. And the tool I actually love for this kind of erasing is, oh, here it is. It's like a little click up eraser. It's the hard white eraser, and it just gives you a little more resistance. See how I can really scrub out some nice light highlights there, and maybe some back here. And I just get these at the art supply store. Let's blend this a little bit. It's a little hard edged for how far back it's supposed to be. And again, behind my highlight, I just want to give it a little value so we can see it popping out of the ground. So there's a couple nice little highlights down there. And again, there's a big jump from these two light areas, so maybe back here, I'll just sketch in some little flower bunches with my eraser stick. Moving back up to my sky, I said I wanted to put a little haze in behind these mountains, very, very light. So just a little bit of vine charcoal. And let's see if I can find a clean piece of my chamois and really get it light back there. I just want to hint at some atmosphere. So right behind this mountain, just a little bit, and with a clean piece, I'll give it some air. And I'm going to put in my cloud shadows now. I'll start with this big one here, and I'm going to use the vine charcoal to create those shadows. And this time when I blend, I'm blending kind of in little C shapes or circular shapes. So I'm not going to blend horizontally like I did down here because the clouds are shaped differently. And notice how I'm not blending well because we want to see the puffiness of the cloud. And I can go in with my charcoal pencil now and create a harder edge and a darker edge around that cloud. So we started with the general shapes and now we're going to move into specifics. So I'm going to care more about the edge of my cloud now and get the sky nice and soft. I want to blend that out pretty well. So I just did that the bottom edge of the top cloud, and now I'm going to focus on the top edge of the cloud here. And with my eraser, I can edge out some really crisp highlights. And this is what's not great about the plastic erasers, is they create little eraser bits that have to come off, but it's not the end of the world. And now I'll put my shadows in this cloud. And you can use the large vine or the small vine, whatever works for you. And I'm going to blend in those circular shapes again very lightly. And then there's a pretty consistent shadow on the bottom of each cloud. And there's this cloud with a little shadow right along here. So use the side of the tool whenever you can, whatever tool you're using. It'll help you work a little bit faster. And I want to smooth out my sky here, so I'm going to use my pencil to create a harder edge around the cloud. And for tighter areas, you can use your blending stump. And my blending stump has some charcoal on it, so I can even use it to blend a little shadow underneath this cloud here. And this cloud shadow gets darker in some places, so I can put those in with pencil. And blend. I'm also blending very lightly with my blending stump. Not over blending. If you over blend things and they lose all their texture and value shifts, then you're going to have a very flat image. I'm always thinking about hard and soft edges while I'm blending. I think all my values are accurate throughout here. I'm going to go a little darker here. And I would like to have a couple of these cloud pieces a little bit lighter. So I'm going to erase that out a little bit there. And let's work on these clouds over here now. So back to my vine. put in the biggest shadows first. And then pencil in the small areas where it gets a little bit darker in the clouds. I will create a harder edge where it meets the sky. And smooth out the sky. Need a harder edge here. And I'm going to smooth that out. And you can also sharpen up cloud edges with your kneaded eraser if you need to. You don't always have to have this little eraser stick. And I will blend those shadows out. I'm going to let the clouds kind of fade away into this foggy area here. And sometimes compositionally, if there's things that aren't in the picture that I'm working from that I think will help the composition, I'll do them. Like I think extending this shadow out here a little bit further will be helpful. Maybe even a little bit right here too. So I just made that up, but that's okay because I think it makes it a stronger composition. And I got a little smudge here for my blending stump, so that's gonna leave with my eraser. Now I'm gonna take a minute to look at the entire drawing, make sure the values are working well together. I don't have any weird smudges, like I think this needs to come out of the cloud up here. I do need a little bit of a harder edge right around there. And I've done this demo for you pretty quickly. I haven't, you know, when I was drawing, I didn't sit down and measure every single proportion. So, you know, a mountain may be a little bit shifted. I ended up with a little extra space in my foreground, but that's okay. I don't want you guys right now to be so focused on the drawing that you don't leave enough time for yourselves to practice all the shading and all the techniques. And then finally, I feel like these are too linear for the field. So let's see what a blending stump would do for those. Not a lot. Maybe we want to use the chamois there. Because these lines are so tiny, I've actually taken my fingernail and pressed the chamois around it so I can get a fine point with it. And I'm just gonna smudge these a little bit horizontally just to soften them into the field. And there's your drawing.